So let me continue with that briefly. Carl comes back, starts Nutrilite in 1934. Tries to go through the traditional channels, goes to retail, nobody buys his stuff, goes in, nobody, he can't sell it anywhere. He can sell it to somebody when he can talk about it, when he can tell the story, but in a traditional channel, he couldn't get any traction. He had a few friends around him that were customers, like a lot of you, friends and family. That'll be the first customers, the first people that encourage you with your idea. But it was hard to kind of get beyond that until he had some woman who said, I like this product, and if you'll give me a discount, I'll sell it to my friends. Pretty basic direct selling model. Well, she sold more than he could ever sell because she could tell the story. So he began to think of ways to develop a direct selling model to enhance the business. So again, this is the 1930s when this is all kind of starting, through the 30s and into the 40s. Let me go back now. So you've got Nutrilite over here perking along. Now I'll go back to Dad and Jay, who come back from World War II, wanted to find a business for themselves. And maybe here's a couple things to think about the timeless aspects. One, having an adventurous attitude, like Carl Renborg, pretty adventurous attitude to go to China in the 20s and do these sorts of things and come back and start this business. Well, Dad and Jay had an adventurous attitude. They wanted to be in business together. And one of the first businesses that they did after World War II was a flight school, just up here in Comstock Park. They taught people how to fly. And now the interesting part of that story is that neither one of them knew how to fly. Right? But that didn't, that didn't stop them, right? They said, well, hire the instructors, we'll go out and get customers. Well, then they realized that, in flying, you can't go at night like your solar thing. You got a problem when it's dark. The runway actually wasn't finished by the time they started, so they put floats on the plane and flew off the river. That's an interesting thing. The weather was bad sometimes, and so their operations were restricted. So they said, well, they can do this in the daytime. What are we going to do at night? So they started the first, drive-in restaurant, the Riverside Drive-In. Right by the airports. They did the airport in the day, then they could do the restaurant at night. One day Dad would cook and Jay would hit bus tables or take orders from the cars, and the next day they'd switch it around. And they had Parkside Specials, which are basically a English muffin with cheese and bacon on it. Can't understand why my dad had heart disease after that, but so they had their special, they had these things going. And so they worked through that a little bit. So starting a flight school when you don't know how to fly is kind of interesting. Time went on. They decided to sell that. They read a book called Cruising the Caribbean by Richard Bertram. They wanted to go to South America. They're going to sail to South America. So they traded in a plane for a boat that they got on the East Coast, and they started sailing to South America. Now the good news about that story is they'd never really sailed before. They didn't know anything about sailing, where they were going, what they were doing. They got so lost once, the Coast Guard couldn't even find them. They're trying to get out of the harbors by New Jersey, Connecticut, through New York and New Jersey, and they went upriver rather than downriver. And the Coast Guard guy goes, so where are you going? They go, we're going to South America. He goes, got a very good start. He says, tell you what, go out to the ocean and turn right. If it gets warmer, you're going the right way. Keep going, And so they did great, right, all the way up until the north coast of Cuba, where they sank. They found their way somehow down the east coast of the United States. They got to the north coast of Cuba, and the boat was always leaking. But they never knew that boats shouldn't leak like that. They'd never been on a boat before. They never sailed before. They thought every boat leaked like that. They just didn't know what they didn't know, but they didn't care. They had that adventurous spirit, that adventurous attitude that drove them on to do things. So it was leaking, a bunch, and they kind of thought they had it repaired at a small fishing village on the north coast of Cuba, and they went back out, and all the repairs failed, and the boat sank. They got rescued and never told their folks about it. I love that part too, right? They gave out an SOS signal. They got rescued, and they never thought to actually follow up and tell their parents they were okay. It's all covered in the local press, all these sorts of things, and it was expensive to make a call from Puerto Rico. They ended up at Puerto Rico in those days. It was expensive to make a call, so they didn't do it. But they didn't stop their trip. They got rescued. They got to Puerto Rico. They hopped freighters through the Caribbean to get to Curacao. They got off the freighter at Curacao, and then they found their way to Cartagena, and then went up the Magdalena River and continued their trip throughout South America. So you're going to have roadblocks, right? You're going to have troubles like your boat sinking or something happening in your product development process that's going to throw you off track a little bit. But they didn't let things throw them off track.